Hi, welcome back to my statistics class. So today we're going to give you some practice about how to construct a confidence interval for a proportion. So basically, how can we find a appropriate fish net to catch our fish? Okay, so a poll is asked 166 adults in the US whether they were baseball fans. 46% say that they were. So construct a 99% confidence interval for the true proportion of US adults that are baseball fans and interpreters. So that means we need to draw a conclusion. Okay, first of all, in order to apply the confidence interval, since this is a confidence interval for proportion, that means we need to know, can we use a sampling proportion for this question? So we need to check the central limit theorem first. So independence. Since this is as 166 adults did not interrupt each other, so I would say this is an independent experience. And definitely randomization. So these two checked. And then we still need to check the success and failure rate. So let's see. They told you that, hey, sample size is 166, and then the proportion is 46%, because 46% of the adults that have been surveyed says that, hey, they are baseball fans. So NP equals to 166 times 46%. Now let's use a Google calculator. We haven't shown it for a long time. 166 times 0.46 equals 76.36. So that's greater than or equals to 10. And we also need to check the failure rate, which is times 54 equals to 89.64. Okay, the failure rate, which is NQ, equals to 166 times 1 minus 46%, which is 89 something, is greater than or equals to 10. That means the success and failure condition also checked. Now we can use a sampling proportion, which means we can construct a 99% of confidence interval. So how do we do that? So the upper bound is going to equals to p hat minus the z-score times the standard errors. Okay, maybe this is hard to remember. Let's do it in an easier way. So the p hat minus the critical z-score times the sigma p hat. And the upper bound is going to be the p hat plus the z-score times the sigma p hat, where is sigma p hat equals to what? Equals to square root of p times q over n. Should be p hat times q hat over n, and take square root of it. And then upper bound would be plus z-score times p hat times q hat over n, and take square root of it. Okay, so now we just plug in the number. We know that p hat equals to what? So now let's take a look. Since we're trying to construct a 99% of confidence interval, right? So that means our z-score, we found it from our previous class, it's going to be 2.5758 in here. So z-score is 2.5758. And then p hat is given, equals to 0.46. Since this is satisfy the sampling distribution of proportion, that means p hat equals to p, which is 0.46, and then Q equals to 1 minus P hat. So this is equals to 54. So we got everything that we need. Oh, also sample size. They surveyed 166 adults. So that's all the information that we have, and that's all we need. We just plug in the numbers. So P hat, we have what? 0.46 minus 2.5758 square root of 0.46 times 0.54. Oh, I don't know why this is keep missing. Divided by 166. And the upper bound is going to be the same, but instead of subtract, it's going to be add. The z-score, square root of it, basically we're just trying to plug in the numbers. Now let's use a Google calculator to calculate that. So we have 0.46 minus 2.5758 times square root of what? 0.46 times 0.54 divided by 166 equals, okay, we found our lower bound, which is 0.36.03, and then we use the same method. Instead of plus, instead of subtract, we change it to plus. So this is equals to 0.5596. So we found our confidence intervals. So now how do we conclude that? Remember, when we conclude that, it has to include in three things. One, when it comes to conclusion, we need the confidence of interval. Second, the range of the value. 3, we need to mention the proportion, this population proportion, which is all. Okay, so we can say we are 99% of confidence to say that the true proportion of US adults who are baseball fans are this range, which is between 13.03% and 15.96%. You can use a decimal, you can change it to a percentage. Okay, now they say construct a 80% of confidence of interval for the true population of US adults that are baseball fans and interpretates. So basically it's the same idea, but since it's 80% of confidence interval, that means we change the z-score to 80% of confidence interval. That means we change in another fishnet. So now take a look. This fishnet is what? Positive and negative 1.2816. So now let's take a look. Our upper bound equals to, again, the p hat plus, oh no, it's a bit subtract. That's the lower bound. Subtract the z-score, our new z-score of a standard average. And upper bound is the p hat plus the z-score times the square root of, standard average, which is the standard deviation of the proportion. Now we just plug in the numbers. The numbers are the same, right? Except for the z-score. P hat always equals to, not always, in this case is 46%, and Q hat equals to 54%. Our N, they surveyed 166 adults, and Z-score is 1.2826. Remember, if you don't remember the Z-score, you can just try to find it from GeoGebra. You can just standardize the distribution, and since we want the net to catch 80% of the chance to catch the fish, that means this 2n is going to be 10%. And we're trying to find the cutoff value for the 10% within A on a standard normal distribution, which means the mean is 0, the standard deviation is 1, so the cutoff value would be 1.2826. You can also find it by that way or look at our notes. Okay, anyway, so we just plug in this number into our confidence interval. So do it by yourself. So we have 0.41 and then 0.51. Okay, so now conclusion. Remember conclusion, we need to include in 3 information: confidence interval, the range of the value, and also the population proportion. So we can say that we are 80% of confidence that the true I don't know why this is keep undo it. The true proportion of the US adults that are baseball fans are 41% to 51%. Okay. So also we can talk about the margin of error. Remember what is the margin of error? So the margin of error, let's do it in here. I'm going to erase this part. So the margin of error equals to the Z-score times PQ hat over N. So Z-score is equal to what? 1.2826 with 80% of confidence interval. And the P hat equals to 0.46 times 0.54 over 166. If you use a calculator, you will end up to have a 0.05, which is 5%. So we can also include in our margin of error with our conclusion. So we can say, hey, with 5% of margin of error. Okay, so now take a look. They ask you, hey, the certainty and precision. What happened to the size of confidence interval more certain you are? So that means, hey, if you try to have a better chance to catch the fish, you use a bigger net, right? So that means the interval is going to be bigger. What happened to the size of the confidence interval is less certain. That means the lower confidence interval. So that means if you have a smaller net, that means you will be less certain to catch the fish, right? So a smaller net means what? The interval is smaller. Okay, next time we're talking about we will talk more about the margin of errors. I'll see you next time.